It is, man. We just keep it moving. But okay, what's up? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Conscious Approach channel on YouTube. My name is JV Wins. That is Dogon SS here on March the 7th to talk about your garden variety of social issues and commentary on the Conscious Approach channel on YouTube. Thank you for joining us. Before we get into this week's topics, as always, I want to say if you are not yet a part of the community, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so that you can know whenever we post or publish new content to the channel as we do so on a more regular basis. We certainly appreciate your support as we continue to push out this logical content. As you can see on the ticker going across the bottom of the screen, we currently have a goal of 1,000 subs. We are getting there slowly but surely. And that might be small time to a lot of big time YouTubers out there, but we don't mind being small fry. We are very self aware over here on this side, over here in the recesses on our corner of the interwebs. Self awareness is an important thing, and we embrace self awareness at all times, or at least we try to. And if we aren't always self aware, we certainly do not mind accountability. So, be that as it may, with those pleasantries out of the way, we will go ahead and get started with this week's topics. Got a lot of good stuff to talk about tonight. The internet's been on fire over the course of the last week, which is interesting because usually we are very measured in terms of the things that we talk about on this channel. But this week, we had a lot going on. So if you saw last week's video, whether it was a part of the larger stream or whether it was a part of the individual video upload, we discussed Michael B. Jordan because Michael B. Jordan called out host L'Oreal. I still don't know exactly how her name is pronounced, but he identified her as someone who used to call him Corny and tease him for his name back when they were in high school. And as recently as 2 years ago, she called him Corny when discussing Michael B. Jordan's relationship with Lori Harvey. And so Michael B. Jordan decided to get a little get back during a screening of his Creed 3 movie. And, you know, there were varying opinions about corniness or lack thereof, Michael B. Jordan and that whole situation. We actually got into a rather deeper conversation than I thought we would on the topic because we delved into the origins of the invocation of the word corny and whether it is rooted in primal instincts or whether it has something to do with more superficial cultural dynamics. I was on the side that believed that it's superficial and cultural. Dogon felt as though it was primal. Nevertheless, it was a very interesting conversation. Well, there was a continuation of this dialogue, courtesy of Mr. Joe Budden. Joe Budden is one of these individuals who's very successful in the podcast space. He is also someone who, in my opinion, has Aaron Rodgers, Kyrie Irving syndrome, in which he at any given moment believes that he is the smartest person in the room. Now, that isn't a shade. It isn't a shade because I can relate to that in certain respects. I'm just calling it how I see it. Joe Budden appears at least to be one of these individuals who thinks that he's smarter than everybody else all the time. That being said, they were talking about Michael B. Jordan on Joe Budden's show, and he had some thoughts on Michael B. Jordan with respect to that interaction and calling the girl out for calling him corny. So we'll go ahead and listen to what Joe Budden had to say, and then we will respond to those comments. Spoiler alert, Joe Budden did not like what Michael B. Jordan did.
Oh, damn.
All right, so here we go. We're going to play what Michael B. Jordan had to say on his show, and it looks like Melissa Ford was on his show as a guest, I'm assuming. But this is a brief clip of Joe Budden's remarks towards Michael B. Jordan and the whole corny situation.
Dog, you doing that to a girl is some corny nigga shit.
I can see that.
You being
That's
Michael
true.
B. Jordan today, allegedly sexiest man alive in all of these blockbuster movies.
I agree.
During your highlight week, you've probably never been more visible than you are right this second, and that's what you do to her. That was corny of him to speak to that girl like that.
I'm not disagreeing. I would have made
Michael B. Jordan. That's why niggas call you corny.
I would have made a joke off air like word.
Hey, Creed. Hey, what's this nigga's name?
I wouldn't have did that in front of
Hey, Creed. In case you were confused, that corny ass shit you did is why niggas think you corny.
Yeah.
In case you were off a little bit. as to why you niggas keep thinking that money hides corny.
Mm.
The beer works trail. No way.
Very interesting.
All right, go away, ads.
Uh,
So yeah, Joe Budden believes that Michael B. Jordan calling L'Oreal out for calling him corny is indicative of why people believe that he is corny. What did you make of what Joe Budden had to say about this?
I think Michael B. Jordan. I think Joe Budden. I think he was speaking from a genuine place of thinking that Michael B. Jordan has corny tendencies, and he thought that that exchange was corny, so he felt calling it out was necessary. Now, since all of this has came out, by the way, Joe Budden has since apologized, basically stating that he was, a little emotional, I guess, or a little out of pocket, taken out of context. Don't take me
Really?
seriously. Oh yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh,
Yeah. He's since apologized, but here's my take on what he said initially in this clip here. And I feel as though he was speaking from a genuine place, but the media has taken this story and thrown Joe Budden under the bus. And so Joe's feeling the heat, and so he had to come out with his own little PR statement on his pod, basically just backtracking, laughing it off kind of attitude. But be that as it may, Joe said that he calls himself corny. He has corny tendencies, and that's true. When I first heard this, I was like, well, Joe, you're corny. You're like one of the corniest guys out there. So, this is the pot calling the kettle black, in my opinion. But how do you feel about this situation, man? Do you feel as though Joe was, in the right for calling him out? How do you feel about his apology? Like, how do you feel about this scenario?
Yeah, I didn't know that he backtracked. That's unfortunate, because even though I don't agree with him, I also don't think that he needed to backtrack anything. If he backtracked this because of pressure from the media, that's sad. That's some sad shit. Of course, you're not making this up, so I believe you that he did backtrack. But to me, that's ridiculous. No one should ever have to apologize for expressing an at the most disagreeable point of view. And at the most, what he said about Michael B. Jordan is disagreeable. It certainly isn't offensive. So if there was anybody who felt as though he owed Michael B. Jordan an apology, including Michael B. Jordan himself, shame on you for that. But that's the world that we live in. That's crazy to me. I didn't know that. I don't think he should have had to apologize or backtrack anything. Now, having said that, I didn't like what he said. I didn't like what he said. First of all, the first thing that he said is, you're doing that to a girl. What the hell does that have to do? Like, what does that have to do with anything? Joe Budden must not be a feminist. He must not be a feminist, right? Because if you're a feminist and you believe that all things are equal, then it doesn't matter whether it's a girl calling a guy corny or whether it's a guy calling a girl corny. It doesn't matter, because whoever is calling whom corny, what difference does it make what the sex or gender of that individual is? So Joe Budden must not be a feminist. He must be more of a traditionalist who believes that women should be accorded a certain kind of attention or behavior that is inherent in the double standard in terms of the way that men and women are viewed differently. And having said that, I disagree with that too. I don't care that this chick was a female. Like, what difference does it make whether it's a man or a woman? If she called the guy corny, she called the guy corny. she initially called him out for being corny. So if Michael B. Jordan wanted to exercise a little get back in that moment and call her out for calling him corny, he was within his right to do that. You might think that it's in poor taste, but even if you think that it's in poor taste, it shouldn't have anything to do with the fact that she's a woman and he did that. Because it denotes, it sort of insinuates that had she not been a woman, then you wouldn't have thought that he was corny for doing what he did. And something tells me that even if it was a guy who called him corny initially, and then Michael B. Jordan in turn decided to call the guy out for calling him corny, I believe that Joe Budden still would have believed that that was a corny thing that Michael B. Jordan did, which speaks to my indication that on a whole, Joe Budden just believes that Michael B. Jordan is a corny guy. And
Right.
again,
That's what I feel like he was just speaking his opinion, like genuinely.
right. So he believes that Michael B. Jordan is a corny guy. I just think that you, and when I say you, I mean Joe Budden, I think that you rid yourself of some validity in terms of your opinion when you bring in things like it's a girl. Who cares? Because now what you're opening yourself up to is, okay, so you don't think he's corny if he's saying this to a guy? And I think Joe Budden is forthright enough in his opinion that it wouldn't make a difference whether it was a man or a woman calling Michael B. Jordan. He would believe Michael B. Jordan was corny regardless. So he just thinks in general Michael B. Jordan is a corny individual. And
Right.
to that, and to that, I say, hey, it is what it is. Now, me personally, I didn't like what Joe Budden said, because I think this speaks to a deeper seated perception in terms of the invocation of the use of the word corny when it comes to Black people. That's where I think this comes from. And so I think that I believe that if you were to switch out Michael B. Jordan for a non-Black person, that person would be less inclined to be viewed upon as corny. But because Michael B. Jordan is a Black male and he acts the way he acts and he has the history that he has, he is looked upon as corny, because to act the way that Michael B. Jordan acts, or to respond in the way that Michael B. Jordan responds, or to have some of the history that Michael B. Jordan has, and to simultaneously be Black whilst having that history and having those sort of characteristics and behavior traits, sort of suggests that you belong in the corny class. And again, if you perceive the world to be that way, I'm not going to knock it. I'm just going to personally disagree. And a lot of my disagreement comes from personal experience dealing with stuff like this. So it struck a nerve with me and it struck a chord, because I dealt with, in my younger days, being classified as this kind of Black person because of some of the things that I brought to the table in terms of my mannerisms and dispositions and the way that I speak and my history. And so I think that it's unfortunate that Michael B. Jordan has to deal with being associated with that kind of a tag. But do I think that this is life-altering and earth-shattering stuff because people think that he's corny? No. Michael B. Jordan lives a great life, a far greater life than I've lived up to this point, at least. And even if Michael B. Jordan is corny, he certainly wasn't corny enough to bag Lori Harvey, even if it was a rental situation. So it is what it is. I just think that it's interesting the way that we choose to use certain words and classifiers like corny specific unto Black people. And I think it interestingly speaks to the way that we pigeonhole certain forms of behavior and mannerisms, and we differentiate and classify Black people along, this is the lane that you're in. Hey, sir, this is the lane that you're in. And so that's the lane that you ought to operate in, and we're going to classify you as such. Nevertheless, also kudos to Joe Budden for self-identifying himself as corny, because I believe that he is corny as well, just like I look at people like Charlemagne as corny. But corny from the standpoint that they say things that I find to be corny, not that they are inherently corny human beings, if that makes sense. But yeah, I just think that people in the media like them, Budden and Charlemagne and others, hell, even people like Kevin Hart sometimes, hey, bro, that was some corny shit that you just said. But do I think that you're a corny person? Well, I guess that depends on how we classify and sort of define the word corny. But that's pretty much all that this came from. It struck a personal nerve, but I think Michael B. Jordan is strong enough to deal with it. And it is what it is. If he's corny, then I'd love to be corny like him and have his reality, because it is certainly a reality to aspire to. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think that with the whole, like you said, everybody has their own definition of corny. And so me personally, I have my own definition I got two definitions of corny, if that's possible. And there's the corny person that's corny because they're just goofy and, you corny as hell. But it's funny because they don't know no better and it's just part of their life. And then there's the person who's trying to be cool and then just does corny and say corny things because they think that what they're about to say is cool or what they're doing is cool. So therefore they look fake doing something that's not them.
yeah. Yeah.
Oh, the corny guy from the corny guy, right? Yeah, I'm at my premiere right now. The corny guy, right?
And so when him trying to, oh yeah, remember me? I'm the corny guy, right? So him doing all of that stuff was corny. That was corny to me. Sorry, he was trying to look cool there to me. When you talk to women and you're around them and they just think they think you're cool, they personally think you're cool, that's a cool experience. You don't have to fake anything to do something cool around her because everything you do is cool to her. So you don't have to act out of yourself. But if you have negative self-images of yourself and you don't think that you're a cool person, then you're going to try to act cool, which is corny. And I don't know Michael B. Jordan personally. I don't know what he does in his personal day-to-day interactions. But I think where all of the smoke is coming from, where people projecting and speaking on him in the Lori Harvey situation, for instance, is that Michael B. Jordan, and somebody had left a comment in the thing. So y'all talking about Michael B. Jordan like you all, anybody talking about him, in our Lori Harvey video. Like, man, I don't think he's all that. The girls do. When we were growing up, I didn't see what these women saw in Denzel or Chestnut and all these people, but they were the acclaimed people that all the ladies like. So the new guy that all the ladies have been clamoring for is Michael B. Jordan. So he's the guy. So to me, man, I'm not comparing acting skills. I'm just comparing black actor, successful, hot Denzel. So he's new Denzel.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, oh, new Denzel, he got one of the hottest things out there. Why did she leave him? This is power couple stuff. Like, what's going on? So I'm pretty sure other people were looking at this and going, and the people that knew him and knew that he acts out of pocket occasionally, trying to be something that he's not, then she may have said, that's probably why she left, because she got a taste of what he is in his real day-to-day life behind closed doors. And he's lame. Now, what constitutes lame, bro? I don't know. Everybody has their own definition. But that my personal definition is you trying to be somebody that you're not. A lot of people try to be better versions of themselves. So they try to, fake it till you make it in a type of sense. So there's a difference between trying to take be a character of yourself that you wish to be or something like that, to push your own personal envelope, and just flat out trying to be, we'll speak about it later with Ja Morant. But later on, just completely like 180, like you're not this person. So my casual mannerisms, the way I carry myself or whatever, and the way that I speak, I don't carry myself like I got felonies and I sold drugs. So if I hung around dudes who actually did that, and then I'm sitting there, I'm a corny dude.
Yeah.
I don't care how I'm a corny guy. Why are you corny? Because I'm not like that. So why am I acting like how I'm not really? That's lame. So I think that for this guy here, I think he's a lame guy. Embrace your lamery. And that's why I was saying about the two definitions of corny. There's a person who tries, and then there's a person who's just, hey, I'm just a goofball.
Yeah, right.
And dad jokes all day long, and they can't help it. They don't try to come up with these dumbass puns. They just a corny person. So I let those people have it. And I love those people. The people who have so much self-denial and so much self-hate that they have to portray a character of what they think is cool, hot, sexy, and all these other things. That's weird and lame. So the best thing is to just be yourself. And that's why I call Joe Budden corny, because he's a cool dude, but he does too much stuff to try to be on and try to, make headlines or whatever. He's got a screw loose. And whenever he does these things, he comes off very corny. And just like this whole situation here, just, shooting off at the hip, saying any damn thing. Yeah. Then double back and apologize. And this is whole shtick.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I'm over with, I've been done with Joe in that regard. I still think he's a okay person, just very confused. Would I have a beer with him? I would have a beer with Joe Budden. Would I hang out with Joe Budden? I wouldn't be Joe Budden's friend. I don't think anybody's really Joe Budden's friend, which speaks to his corniness. Because nobody can get close to him. He doesn't know who he is, which is corny. I can keep going down the line of what constitutes corniness. So corniness has nothing to do about being cool. Corniness has everything about you not being yourself. Oh, the corny guy from you ain't got to do that, bro. You're not acting right now. So why you got to, oh yeah. Oh yeah. No, let's talk about it. Yeah.
I hear what you're saying. It's just, I just think sometimes there are moments when you decide that you're going to just get a little payback. And I mean, you can, because I get the impression, I don't know Michael B. Jordan either, but I get the impression that he's been dealing with this type of stuff since he was a kid. Yeah. And so there's some resentment. And again, this is wild speculation on my part, but if I'm going to attempt to psychoanalyze the situation, I get the impression that he's dealing with years upon years of built up resentment against this idea that he is this corny person. He's probably been getting called corny since he was a kid in elementary school. Yeah. And so now that he's become as successful as he is, he's going to, it's still in him. Like that resentment, is still in him. And so now that he's an adult, if an individual calls him corny and he encounters that individual, some of that resentment is going to boil over and manifest itself in the way that it did when he was at that premiere, when he just couldn't help himself and he compulsively called the girl out for calling him corny. And in his mind, he's probably thinking to himself, like, hold up, like, you called me corny in 2020. Like, and that was one of the things that I brought up, is like, it's not like he was calling her out. See, to me, he would have been even less justified in what he did if he was calling her out from some stuff that she said when they was in high school or whatever, middle school, or when they was growing up. But she called him corny 2 years ago when he was dating Lori Harvey. And in his mind, and what I'm saying is, in his mind, if I'm putting myself into the mind of Michael B. Jordan, in his mind, he's probably saying to himself, how are you going to call me corny when I've been doing all of these movies and doing all of this successful stuff and I dated her? That's probably what he's thinking in his head. So he has an inability to reconcile the fact that an individual, despite everything that he has done, still would look at him as corny. And that's a hard pill to swallow. And so because it's difficult to swallow that size of a pill, you're going to get petty and publicly call a girl out for calling you corny. So I guess the place that I'm at with it is, I'm not trying to excuse it. I'm just trying to rationalize it as best I can. I don't want to
Oh,
pray
yeah.
tell him. Yeah, I don't want to pray tell him as corny or lack thereof. I've just seen it before and I've experienced it firsthand. And maybe he's still learning how to be comfortable enough in his own skin to not care about the fact that people think that he's corny, despite how successful. Like, look, hey, Michael B. Jordan, bro, you'll probably never see this video, but take it from me. It doesn't matter how much more you can become as success. You can become a billionaire. You can become Black Tony Stark in real life. There's still going to be people who think you're corny, and they're going to say it. And you can't take the time out to call all of those people corny when you encounter them, because then you're just going to look more and more petty the more you do it. But it doesn't matter how much more successful he becomes. People are still going to think he's corny. Because a lot of times first impression is a lasting impression. So it doesn't matter what you do subsequently after people have formulated the idea about you that you're corny, you're going to remain corny no matter what. So the thing about it is, like, if I'm going to attempt to try and psychoanalyze it, it's just hard for him to reconcile his success with the fact that people still think that he's corny. And the difficulty in that kind of a reconciliation manifests itself in him doing that. Corny guy. That's a very good impression, by the way.
What's that?
The impression that you did of him, corny guy, right?
That's what he was doing.
Yeah, that is what he was doing. But I feel like that's where it came from, and so like he's probably just like, hey, man.
Well, listen, he's so corny that he can't help but to look corny when he does that to me. And my thing is, it's okay. Listen, it's okay to be lame, dude. Like I went through. Hey, guess what? I went through elementary and middle school, and I've talked about it before on this channel, where grappling with weight issues, grappling with clothes issues when going to public school, and you just dealing with vultures every day. And so I went through the same thing myself. And so everybody adapts to it differently or whatever. But I took so many lumps down the road, and the one thing that gave me solace every day, the one thing that I was able to just go to sleep and just be peaceful was that those people are like haters. They're like mad at me for whatever reason. And the only way they can get at me is by like attacking me. So, with words. And so I'm talking about actual bullying.
Yeah,
and
right.
If he was getting bullied or teased because he looked effeminate, was too this, too that, was small when he was little, so now he had to grow up and be swole and do all of this stuff to just get back at the world. If that's his angle, bro, so be it. But at the same time, there has to be some level of, hey man, visiting that young guy. I visit my young Dogon all the time. And and whenever I'm thinking about things or something comes up about when I was young and I felt embarrassed, or when I was young and I tried to talk to that girl and she just absolutely windmilled on me. Instead of just telling me no, she just did all this crazy stuff. And so every once in a while when I have a traumatic, memory, I'll just think of, hey, how ignorant was I back when I was that age? How was I this? How was I that? And how innocent was I? And people were actually making fun of my innocence more than making fun of anything else. So, so of course, as I got older and, and I realized being yourself is the key. Man, I'm not saying I'm not corny to people. I don't say or do corny things. I think being corny is a part of life. And I think it's corny to be offended by being called corny.
Yeah, I agree.
And if you say that I do stuff that's lame, of course, I'm human. I'm not going to be 100% fire all the time, although I may think so. But you still, but at the same time, when I have my moments where I literally fucked up, I don't know, had too much coffee, tried to slip one out and sharded on myself. I'm a human. Things happen. What am I going to be embarrassed for the rest of my life because shit happens? No, man, it goes on. Life goes on. So
But
if I had it,
yeah.
so I'm saying, so if I had an embarrassing moment in school, which I did, I had a number.
We all did. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So when I had my moments and whatever, you know what I think of? I say, you know what? Nobody else remembers that. I'm sitting here traumatizing myself about something somebody said to me in 3rd period in 7th grade. That guy don't even remember saying that. But I remember the period, the date. Give it a break. Get over it and get over yourself. Mm-hmm.
I agree. And I do think that there is an aspect. So like Michael Jordan famously, you know, they mentioned it in the documentary, and a lot of people talk about this when they're having these Michael Jordan conversations, right? Michael Jordan would manufacture opponents, and he would remember little things that people didn't even mean as a slight, but he would remember it and internalize it as a slight so that he could use it as motivation to be successful in his playing career. Like, if there was an aspect of that Michael B. Jordan was using that kind of an approach when it comes to the corny thing, then I'm not going to knock it. Because like my thing is, okay, if being cognizant of the fact that people call you corny helps you with that internal drive to become more successful, then hey, I'm not going to knock you for that, bro. Do whatever it is that you got to do to use whatever form of motivation that you need to use in order to get to where you need to be. But understand that there is a line of demarcation between using it as internal fuel and parading that around publicly in that capacity, because all it's going to do is make people think you're corny still, right? It's not going to do anything to dispel the fact that people think you're corny. So like, use it as internal motivation, but it stops short of calling a girl out. But here's the thing about it though, and you know this, people like him, and really all of us, really all men, not even just Michael B. Jordan, but all men, when it involves women, it stings a little harder, right? Because we want to appeal to women as best we can. So I think that if it's dudes calling Michael B. Jordan corny, he probably doesn't care as much. But because it's women, he probably feels some type of way, because we want women to think of us as the greatest thing since sliced bread. We don't want women to perceive us to be anything less than 100% what they want. And obviously, if a woman thinks of you as corny, there's a negative connotation associated with that tag. So it's going to cause, and especially when you take into account a guy such as him, whom I would imagine probably got called corny by girls when he was growing up. So if you mix all of that up, and then you got a female after you become successful still looking at you as corny, a lot of that stuff is going to boil over, and he's just going to lose control of his mouth, and he's going to call her out. And it's like, I get it, bro. Like, when it's women involved, it becomes a different game. It does. And I'm not trying to excuse it. I still think that maybe he was better served by not paying lip service to the fact that she called him corny. But in the moment, when you feel as though you have the opportunity to get some get back, and it involves a woman calling you corny, that's probably the way that it spilled over. It's just different when there's women involved. And you know, the last thing that I'll say is, I pride myself on, and I mention this often on this channel, I think that it is extremely important for all humans, but men in particular, to be comfortable enough in your own skin to know who you are and think for yourself. I think that it is the most important thing in the world to be an individual who thinks for themselves. And in saying that, I think that it's important for an individual to think for themselves. When you are somebody who thinks for themselves and you don't subscribe to groupthink mentality, you don't subscribe to hive mentality, you have a mind of your own, and you're not going to go with the wave. You're going to express your own opinions, and you're not going to care who disagrees or agrees with you. When you're an individual who thinks for himself, you're going to get called corny, and you're going to get called lame. These things are going to happen because you're not a group thinker. When you're not a group thinker and you stand alone, you're going to get called these things that denote that you're not somebody that does what everyone else does. That's actually a good thing. So if people call you corny or lame or weird, go with it. it's an indication that you are identified as an individual who thinks for himself. But if you're uncomfortable with that and you find that painstaking to be called corny, it's indicative of you being uncomfortable in your own skin. And it's indicative of you being someone who is more likely than not to be a group thinker. And so I think that gaining the awareness of that for individuals such as Michael B. Jordan or anybody else, and learning how to use that to turn it around in order to become an individual who's confident in his own skin and thinks for himself, that's the important lesson to be had from this situation. Because money doesn't change any of that. It doesn't matter how rich you become, how successful you become. We see it all the time. These weirdo basketball players and these pro athletes and these rappers and these entertainers who are group thinkers and they go with the wave. Those people look corny for real. Corny in the sense of what you describe, an individual who just doesn't know how to be himself or herself. That's the real corny. But if you get called corny just because you're you and you say things from time to time that don't ride the wave and you have your own unique opinions and you are your own individual, that's not something to shun. That's something to embrace, even if it comes from a woman. If women want to call you corny because you talk this way or dress this way, great. Keep talking that way and dressing that way, because they're going to respect you for the fact that you are your own individual, which at the end of the day is the most important thing to have, is the respect of your fellow contemporary. Not getting coddled or placated as a group thinker because you're trying to be something that you're not. So, I think that's the lesson to be had in all of this. And he ain't the only person. There's a lot of these other celebrities out there who get caught up in this minefield. And they're better served by just understanding that it's a good thing to be called these labels. And it's one of the reasons why I got out of the business of even calling people like a long time ago. I started actively working on exercising the use of certain words from my vocabulary. So I've been stopped calling people weird or corny or lame. I don't even use those words, because what does that mean? Normal is another one. I don't call people normal, because what is that? And what is the absence of normal? It denotes that there is a baseline form of behavior that is normal and everything else is not normal. And I fundamentally disagree with that notion, because I think everyone is entitled to be their own unique individual self. So I don't believe that I don't believe in normal, corny, lame, weird. I don't believe in these things. But if we are going to use the words, I would use them in the capacity in which you used it, to describe an individual who is genuinely going out of their way to be someone that they're not. That's the real corny. But if you're actually if you're actually living your truth and being who you are, you ain't gonna hear nothing from me based on how you talk, dress, act, or anything. And most people who think for themselves are also going to not do that. So just, focus on being your own individual self and don't fall in line with the group thinkers, and you'll be all the better for it.
And I'll just say this, that I do think Michael B. Jordan used that as fuel for his life. I think he already wanted to be great, but then all this other stuff just added stuff to it. And so he was going to have his day where he was going to do his windmills. And that interview was one of them. It was good lineup, perfect timing for that. So, hey man, I don't care. If he's, I personally don't know the man, but he does come off as corny to me. Sorry, but sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, you trying to tear a black man down? No, I'm not. And then people gonna say. And then the other thing, and the other thing is, corny is relative. So with these relative definitions, you're the only person that sleeps with you at night. Even if you got a wife and she sleeps in a bed with you, you're the only person that has those thoughts before you go to sleep. So you sleep with you. So if you're the only one that has to deal with these things, you do not internalize what somebody else has to say about your life, because they're sound asleep in their bed, and I can guarantee you they are currently not thinking about you or
Mhm.
about the crap they said to you 20 years ago. So let it go. And I'm sure if you talk to a therapist, they'll tell you the same thing in a roundabout way. But like I said, corny is relative.
Yeah.
And you can grab a cool dude that a whole bunch of people say, oh, this is a cool guy. He's solid as hell. You put him around a girl who's used to dealing with guys who sell drugs. She dealt with a hitman before, so she dealt with a guy who murdered people before. But we take this solid dude that everybody co-signs in Normalville, even though you don't like normal.
Yeah.
Even with these people, right? Everybody co-signs this guy. You give that guy to her, she's gonna see some stuff that he's doing that's safe, like putting on a seatbelt, paying his bills on time and doing all this other stuff. She's gonna call him lame.
Yeah.
She's gonna call him corny. Why is she calling this guy who's handling his business that everybody else co-signs corny? Because she's not on her square. And one more thing, and if you remember what we talked about before, when they call people squares, oh, you're a square. You don't want to smoke under the bleachers. You're a square, man. And why do they call people squares? And when you talk about and you're dealing with masonry or square business or being on your square, that's handling things the right way. So handling things the right way. Why is being called a square a negative connotation in that point? Outside of people who live a life that's full of crap and they want to crap on people who are actually doing the right thing. So Michael B. Jordan, guess what he was doing in school? I don't know, getting good grades, having face shots, trying to be a celebrity in the future, doing the right thing. And then people who don't want to be the right people look at somebody who's doing the right thing and then call them corny. So again, corny is relative. Take it with a grain of salt. Most likely those people are haters. Did I just call Michael B. Jordan corny earlier? I did. But why did I call him corny? It's not because I'm a hater. Yeah, right. Boo. The reason why I called him, reason why I think that he's corny is I think that he has all this built up stuff, as you mentioned, on some Will Smith stuff. And he's just walking around with all this pent up stuff of, I'm not lame. I'm going to show you. It's like, no, you don't have to show me anything, bro. You directed your own creed. You don't have to prove nothing anymore, dude.
He really doesn't. Yeah. He doesn't.
Yeah, man.
He doesn't.
So yeah, have at it, Michael B. I wish him the best. I wish Joe a therapist, and I hope he gets better.
Yeah, man. One thing that is true is when you address it in that way, you really are giving power to those who called you that.
Yes.
Because now you're sort of you're providing them with the platform to be able to gain, to be able to get notoriety from the comments that they made about you. When otherwise you're like, when they were on that podcast, the little host girl, the L'Oreal chick, and she was calling Michael B. Jordan corny. It's like you said, man. Pretty much right when they moved on to the next segment on that very show, she had forgotten that she said that. Definitely by the time that she went to bed that night, she wasn't thinking about the fact that she called him.
Thank you.
But the thing is, it struck a nerve with him because of his history. And so, whenever I come across things like this, the way that I help people reconcile it is the same way that I allowed myself to reconcile it, which is when people call you corny in that context, right? So not what you're describing, because what you're describing, I'll give legitimacy to when it comes to, identifying somebody that way. But most people don't do that. Most people just say you're different, so you're corny. And it's like, look, all that means is you're being yourself. And you are embracing yourself and your individuality, and you're not a group thinker, and you're comfortable enough in your own skin to be confident with who you are as a man, woman, human being, whatever. And that is the most invaluable thing that you can do for yourself and your own personal growth. But you compromise that mission when you languish in that resentment, and then you get petty with it whenever it's convenient for you to become petty because somebody called you corny in high school. So it is what it is, man. I would agree he should get over it. He can use it as motivation, but it stops short of using it in a petty context, because then people don't really care that they called you corny or lack thereof. They don't. So it is what it is. And yeah, Joe Budden's corny too. He is,
man. And I got some crusty females that, like I said, that just windmilled on me when she just could have said no.
Yeah.
That's a lot of them that I can get real close up on the camera and say, "Yeah, you remember that?" Because I see you on Facebook right now, and you looking like shit.
Yeah. Yeah. He really he does he does not have anything to prove. He doesn't have anything to prove. He doesn't.
nothing to prove to me.
He doesn't. Like, yeah, you and again, I rationalize it because I understand it. So I'm not going to totally kill him for doing it because I somewhat know the place in which it comes from. But still, it doesn't necessarily put you in the best light, regardless. So, bro, just let it go. Like, first of all, that chick don't look half as good as Lori Harvey, right?
Oh.
So who cares if she called you corny? You had Lori, so it is what it is, man.
Lori,
It is what
Lori
it
called
is.
Lori called him corny too.
She did.
I don't know. She probably did.
May have. I don't know. Well, she's with her and her NDAs. Who knows? We'll never know because he signed an NDA. So
Yeah, I signed one too. So I ain't gonna talk about it. So.
yeah. Oh man, yeah. Stay on your square, Michael B. Jordan. Stay on your square, bro. You doing good, man. Yeah.
Forget the haters, dude.
Yeah, man. All right, so next up, we're going to talk about Deion Sanders. So pretty much right when we went off stream last week, this video went viral of Deion Sanders on the Rich Eisen show talking about some of the things that he looks for in a quarterback and how it's different than some of the things that he looks for in, for example, a defensive lineman when it comes to him being a head coach. And he caught a lot of flack for this comment. And I thought it was worth bringing up because it brought up, a lot of people felt as though he was, playing upon racial tropes of black men with these comments.
No way.
And they thought that it was in poor taste. They thought that what he said was in poor taste and it was racially charged. And so he got raked through the coals for making these comments on the Rich Eisen show. Now, to the best of my knowledge, I do not believe that Deion Sanders has walked any of these comments back. I was looking this up earlier this afternoon. I could not find anything on the internet in which he walked anything back. I sincerely hope that he does not walk any of this back, but it got a lot of people talking about what he said. So we'll go ahead and listen to his comments about scouting and players and all of this kind of stuff, and then we will opine on what he had to say.
Quarterbacks are different.
Yeah.
We want mother, father, dual parent.
Mhm.
We want that kid to be 3-5 and up because he's got to be smart.
Mhm.
Not bad decisions off the field at all
Mhm.
because he has to be a leader of men. It's so many different attributes and what we look for. Physical, offensive lineman. Defensive lineman is totally opposite.
What do you mean?
Single mama. Trying to get it. He's on free lunch.
I'm sorry, I did that.
Trying to make
Goddamn on that.
like mama barely made the flight. Quarterbacks are different.
Yeah.
We want.
Damn. That boy said single mama.
Right. So that pissed a lot of people off. Marcus Spears chimed in. He didn't like it. Marcus Spears said that it wasn't funny. He also said he don't know Deion Sanders, so he's not going to necessarily cast aspersions upon his character, but those comments were in poor taste. You had a lot of people talking about how much in poor taste this was. Look, this is Chris Williamson here. This is just one of the comments. Deion ain't the only coach who think this way, sadly, but it hurts more when coming from a black man. Another disappointing step in his journey. So a lot of people didn't like what he had to say. They felt like it was playing upon low-hanging fruit when it comes to black men and their intelligence or lack thereof and all of this other stuff that people just sort of, I think people read into his comments these things. I didn't necessarily think that he was saying that stuff or inferring it, but a lot of people had issue with this. Did you read any of that into what Deion said? Did you necessarily have a problem with anything that he said here? I thought that it was rather whatever, but a lot of people in Black Twitter and Black America at large took serious umbrage to Coach Prime's comments about quarterbacks and defensive linemen.
I don't have a problem with it. Have you seen defensive linemen? You know, the good ones. Do you know the mentality that's necessary to be like an elite defensive lineman? Even if you're air quote undersized, like Aaron Donald, who's 6 foot tall, there still has to be. And I don't know his parental backgrounds. I'm just bringing up just the mentality and the oomph that's necessary, the gorilla, the animal that's necessary on a defensive and offensive line. You want some maulers down there. And if you have some guys that are mauling down there, they're fighting for a lot more than a scholarship. They're fighting for their mom. They're fighting for their family. They're the man of the house. They've been the man of the house. They're the man of the family, a lot of these guys. So they fight for that. So he was joking in the sense that when you're dealing with quarterbacks, quarterback is different than D-line. So quarterbacks requires high intellect. So I'm going to need some GPAs. I'm going to need somebody who's a good leader, a good facilitator. I'm going to need somebody who saw dual parent households with structure, so that way they can give that structure to the rest of the team. There's more to and layers to the stuff that he was given as bullet points. But if you extrapolate it into the characteristics which makes a quarterback, the intangibles that make a good quarterback, he just named the bullet points that you look for: a GPA, a this, a that, solid rubric. Now, that's for quarterbacks because they have to be the leaders of the entire locker room. Honestly, my job is dependent on this one person. But then once you get to the defensive line, all of that stuff doesn't apply anymore. So the joke of single moms, why not? Because I needed 2-parent household over here. Why? For structure. Over here, defensive line, go tear somebody up. You don't need structure for that. You need chaos. Now, I'm not saying that there's no good D lineman or offensive lineman. Offensive linemen generally have good parents, by the way. I'm just go ahead and say that. And what I mean by that is you typically see that those are the big men who were raised well. And then the defensive linemen, they're animals. They're animals. You know, Vontez Burfict just tearing people's heads off. So when you're talking football, we're not talking all this other stuff. We're talking football. And when you're talking about filling a roster full of characteristics, all right, hey, I want my defensive lineman to be like this. I want my offensive lineman, my defensive back, my receivers to have this type of mentality. And honestly, if I was recruiting receivers, I would want a receiver that has a little diva in him. Why? Because he's a superstar and he wants the ball. He wants the ball so bad, he's going to get open. Unlike that other guy who's just fast. I want the diva. Sorry. Now, am I going to probably deal with some stuff? Yeah, but we also going to put up some numbers. Now, dealing in high school and college, you're really not going to have a problem. Well, maybe with NILs, you're really going to have real divas now. But the real diva receivers become a problem in the NFL. This guy's dealing with college recruits, high school kids. So he's looking at bullets. So I personally take zero offense to this. I've got more to say.
So let's Marcus Spears was a defensive lineman.
That's right.
Right. So if Marcus Spears' frustration with Deion's comments revolve around Deion's apparent insinuation that defensive linemen don't have to be smart, then even though I think that you're taking it too personally, I will nevertheless say you're justified in feeling some type of way about that, because Marcus Spears was a defensive lineman and he's a smart guy. I watch him on ESPN regularly, and he strikes me as an intelligent person. So if he's an intelligent person and he believes himself to be intelligent and he played D lineman, and Deion is saying, hey, you can be a D lineman and basically just be an oaf, then I can understand why Spears would feel some type of way about that, because Spears played D lineman and Spears is smart. But I don't think that's where Spears is coming from. I think Spears is coming from the racial component. And so when it comes to the racial component, like I listened to that clip several times, And it's hard to contextualize it because we didn't see the whole show, or at least I didn't. I don't know what was said 2 minutes before that or 2 minutes after that. But in that particular aspect, that part, I didn't hear Deion Sanders mention black or African American in that part. I didn't. He was talking about football players. He didn't mention black or African American. So at that point, you're assuming that by him bringing up things like free lunch and single parenthood, single mama, you're assuming that he's talking about black kids. You're making that leap and you're being presumptuous in that regard. And that's where I think Deion's comments are being treated. I think Deion is being treated unfairly in that regard. And this is where this stuff gets overblown when it comes to sports, particularly college, particularly football and basketball. These coaches, like, are there outliers and exceptions where you do have coaches who feel some type of way about racial constitution? Maybe. I'm not going to completely dismiss that idea. But by and large, these people just want to win games. Deion wants to win football games. The majority of these coaches just want to win games. They don't care whether they don't care whether their defensive line is full of black kids or white kids. They don't care. They just want the best players on the defensive line to rush the quarterback, to get sacks and fumbles and force interceptions. Like, they don't care whether these kids are black or white. I don't think Deion cares whether his defensive linemen are black or white. I don't. I just think he wants to win games. And so because I think Deion wants to win games and he doesn't care whether the defensive linemen are black or white, when he's making comments like that, talking about single mama or whatever, he's not saying black kids who are coming from single parent households or dealing with free lunch or mama barely made the flight. He's just talking about football players, defensive linemen in general, who might be coming from that circumstance. Now, if you want to infuse upon that your own conclusion that disproportionately those are going to comprise black kids, then that's you insinuating based upon your own preconceived notions with respect to Deion's comments. But at face value, Deion was just saying there is a difference between the things that we pay attention to when it comes to defensive linemen versus the things that we pay attention to when it comes to quarterbacks. The conversation around Deion's comments immediately devolved into a racial conversation. If it had just been left at the merit of intelligence when it comes to defensive linemen, I probably wouldn't have even picked this topic to talk about on this channel, because I would have just been like, all right, yeah, I kind of get why people are kind of mad. You know, if you want to sit here and just kind of talk about how defensive linemen overall can be stupid, I can kind of get where people might get upset, because you might have some parents whose kids were defensive linemen and they raised a smart kid. Like I said, Spears was a defensive lineman. He's a smart guy. You got a whole lot of people out here who play defense, who are on the defensive side of the ball, who are defensive linemen, and they're intelligent. So anything that goes counterintuitive to the idea that you can be smart and be a defensive lineman might strike a chord with certain people. But ain't nobody talking about the intelligent aspect of what he's talking about. They're talking about the racial stuff. And that is completely assumed. And the individuals who are sort of infusing race into his comments are being presumptuous based upon their own preconceived notions about race and football. I think Deion just wants to win, and he just recruits the best players he can. And I think that generally speaking, when he's recruiting defensive linemen, he's just saying it don't matter as much as being a quarterback, your relative level of intelligence or the familial environment that you come from. It's just about what are some of the things that we prioritize when it comes to drafting defensive linemen juxtaposed to quarterbacks. And that's completely, to me, fair and in bounds. But because people are so hypersensitive, especially when it comes to football and to a lesser degree basketball, if a person in Deion's position makes these sorts of comments, then other things are going to be brought into the equation that shouldn't apply unless Deion was being more apparent in terms of his invocation of these various themes, race notwithstanding. And I don't think he did that. But, you know, that's just kind of what people do. They kind of go overboard with it. And I think that that's where Spears' contention with Deion, I don't think it has anything to do with the defensive lineman stuff. And I think it has everything to do with the race stuff. And it's just like, hey, man, look, it is what it is. I think we conveniently like to take advantage of these things to make a point, because I've heard black people or just people at large over and over say black people aren't the only ones who come from single parent households. White kids come from single parent households too. So what's the huggabaloo over bringing up single parenthood exclusively when it comes to black people? So you can't try to take the sting out of the single parent argument when it's convenient for you. But then when Deion makes an innocuous comment in which he isn't even mentioning race at all, you want to assume that he's talking about racial stuff. It kind of seems to me as though we're trying to have our cake and eat it too when it comes to this. I don't really think he was thinking along those lines, which is why I don't think he is being made to apologize for it, and he hasn't walked it back. Like I said, I hope he continues to not walk it back, because I don't necessarily have a problem with what he said, even though social media troll world has all of the problems with what he said.
Well, and I don't even think, to sit around and to think, even for Marcus Spears, which, by the way, I also think I'm a fan of what he does. Even all that ESPN stuff with the yelling and stuff, he's the more tolerable person out of that whole fiasco. So I'm a fan of his. But when it comes to this situation, I disagree. And because if you really do, if you sit down, does anybody really think Deion, well, outside of the people that were just haters that he left Jackson State, do they think he really hates black people? Do they think Deion is some I think people think Deion's some big time buck dancing, sellout, Sambo man. I think that this is a image that people are starting to paint to him. Now, granted, he's talking about single parent households and this and that, barely making the flight. He ain't say nothing about watermelons or fried chicken. So I didn't hear any stereotypes towards black people. And like you said, you, sir, are making an assumption. Now, granted, generally speaking, when you're talking about defensive linemen and all this other stuff, you probably are talking about African Americans. But I would also come back to you and say, but do you think Deion Sanders hates black kids? In order to do what Deion Sanders did at Jackson State, and everybody knows the record, all right? Him coming out of pocket, them stealing money from the football team, this and this and this and that. Him bringing the spotlight, all that good stuff. You think a man who hates black people does that? So he sacrificed years of his life to do that. And on top of that, he created a legacy that people can now emulate in the future of what to do with HBCUs, what to do with young black boys trying to play football. Just being a coach and a father figure for guys on his teams who don't have moms or dads or whatever. So he see these guys. Y'all sitting on Twitter. No locker room of men where there's 80-something people on your team and 60% of them come from single-parent households. Y'all don't do the metrics. Y'all don't see these kids in the eye every day. So what are y'all talking about? So Deion Sanders is honestly one of the most hated on people because of how baller he is. Now, granted, he's got a little extra flair, and he's going to get a little flary on you, but his flair only offends people who aren't confident in themselves. Deion displays a self-confidence that most Americans wish they had. And when he's out there doing what he wants to do, when he wants to do it, how he wants to do it, saying it how he wants to say it, a lot of people who are corny have an issue with Deion Sanders being himself. He's not going to hold his tongue on Rich Eisman's show. And just like how we were saying earlier, he was just comparing the two. Quarterbacks are like this. They have to be specific. You can roll the dice on that kid who who came from a single parent household with a 2.8 GPA. Roll that dice. That kid's getting suspended in 2 years. You wasted a whole scholarship, recruiting all that time and energy. The boy never played a snap. Or you got the 3.5 kid with 2 parents. Got him in early enrollment and all this other stuff. This kid's going to be there. He's not going to get kicked off the team. This guy been around football his whole life. He knows what to look for. Get over it. Marcus Spears as well. Because there's a degree of this that you also understand where he's coming from. But there's also a degree of you working for ESPN.
Yeah.
And so there's a degree that you have to have something to say about what he just said.
Yep.
So I'm not buying Spears' take. I think that the people on the internet that got their panties in a bunch are just Deion haters from day one, looking for anything to kick up dust on his name. And so forget those people out there. I've seen all type of stuff. Oh, Deion think he going to Colorado, and what about powernomics in the black community? Save your powernomics. All right. So let this man go out there, do his best Obama impersonation. Give some good visuals, show us what black coaches can do. Go out there, do your thing, and ball out. I'm a fan of it, man. And honestly, bro, if Lord willing, I'm going to Colorado this upcoming season, and I will be watching the game.
Yeah.
So, I will be out there.
I want to get out there and watch one too, just as long as it's got to be earlier in the season, because I'm not going out there when it gets cold. Yeah.
Well, we could talk about this offline, but I think the Nebraska game, it's like a few games where it's like, hey, it's gonna be done, but I'm gonna go. I'm gonna be there.
What's like, I just
boy, them white folks in they're gonna be like, well, we wanted Deion Sanders, but these guys in my Airbnb, all right. Yeah. Oh, it's legal out there too. So they gonna
I know. It's gonna be a party. But one thing, whenever racial dynamics are a part of the national conversation, at least this is what I've observed, is whether it's the mainstream media, news shows, sports, especially if it's a topic that revolves around an athlete or a sport, it gets talked about. Because usually what happens if it's big enough, if it's a big enough topic and it happened in sports, it also gets picked up by mainstream media, and so it gets talked about on Fox and CNN and MSNBC and all of these other networks and stuff. And whenever they talk about it and they bring these panels on to discuss these topics, you will always get people who are wanting to dispel the idea that there is a direct correlation between single parent households and the plight of the African American community. I see it all the time. Like Bomani Jones years ago was on Dan Le Batard's show, because one of his things is talking about how black kids being from single parent households has nothing to do, or is not an indicator of whether they're going to be able to become successful or fall into trouble, or all of these other things that other people might assume. You know how it is. Like they'll say, oh, well, he didn't come from a structured household with 2 parents, and that's why they're all messed up. And so you have a lot of people who want to dispel this idea that there is a correlation between being raised within a single parent context and being prone to some of the trappings that tend to follow black people in this country. And so to that, I'll say, okay, fine. If we want to do that, and we want to talk about how there is no correlation between single parent households or lack thereof, because other communities deal with single parent households too, right? White kids get raised by single parents, children of divorce, all of this kind of stuff. It's not just black people who deal with this. Right. If we're going to be consistent in believing that there is no correlation or causation with the single parent dynamic, then we must therefore be consistent enough to not be presumptuous and think that what Deion Sanders' comments were about was laced in anything that was race-based. So let's just be consistent across the board. Because I'm willing to agree. Like, if we want to go far enough as to say that single parenthood has nothing to do with this stuff, then let's also be consistent enough to say Deion's comments had nothing to do with race. Because I genuinely don't think they did. I just think that he's a football coach who's trying to recruit the best players to win games. So, when it comes to the defensive line, he's just going to look for certain things on the defensive line that aren't necessarily some of the things that he looks for when it comes to his quarterback. And whether the kid's black or white has nothing to do with it. It can be a 6'5" trailer park white kid who's good on the defensive line, who's being raised by a single mom and has a 2.5 GPA or whatever. These things are possible. You statistically, you might say it's not. Statistically, it's probably more often than not going to be black people. But again, if we want to dispel the notion that single parenthood is something that is uniquely, inextricably bound to the black existence, then let's also say that it's consistent. Let's also be consistent and say that Deion's comments weren't necessarily laced in race. But you hit on something that's very appropriate. Spears does work for ESPN. And ESPN, and this is, again, speculation. I'm not saying that this is why Spears said what he said, but I'm just going to say that when you are someone who has sort of made a name for yourself, being a part of this social justice thing where you always have to lend your voice to these topics and sort of talk about these things like race and all of this other stuff, even in situations where it doesn't necessarily fit, you're going to sort of put that language in there because you kind of feel like as though you're speaking to your own personal brand. And so could that be a place that Marcus Spears came from? I don't know. It could be. I'm not going to say it is, but I'm also not going to say it isn't. But moreover, I just think that this is a football conversation. And people just need to leave it at that instead of assuming that Deion was being this nefarious race bait, not even race baiting, but just this person who was assuming that black kids automatically come from single parent households. If we want to say that they don't, and that's a stereotype and a trope, then let's be consistent enough to believe that Deion wasn't playing into that and he was just talking about defensive linemen in general. Like, that's pretty much it. But this is just what happens with the internet. He must have been playing to low-hanging fruit and the small and sort of some of the most basic tropes when it comes to black people in America. And I just kind of think it's uncalled for. And Deion does get called to the carpet for being this, whatever you want to say, I don't know, sellout or whatever. But look, man, it's like Jay-Z said in that song, "Devil is a lie." The devil wants black people to hate their own kind. Or what does he say? Devil want these. I'm gonna edit it because he's used other words, but he said, devil want these people to hate their own kind. It's got to be the Illuminati if a brother shines, or I can't be a brother if a brother is rich, or it has to be the devil. That's some black people stuff. And go ahead and listen to the song for yourself if you don't know what I was saying there. But those were some true lyrics because that is what we do to each other. That's what we did with Deion with these comments, and I think that they were uncalled for.
And the last thing I'll say is that Deion has always attracted this energy, always. And if you remember in the 90s, early 90s, I'm talking about the Florida State days, after Florida State. I mean, the guy has been a walking headline. And, he took, a hiatus after he retired in the sense of, now he was still on NFL Network. He was still doing this, but he wasn't in your face like he is now. And he's in your face again like he's in the league. So you're going to have to hear his name. And so, but when you have to hear Deion's name, he's going to make you hear it. And he has a very unique ability of doing that every single time. And that's going to attract, like moths to a flame. People are just going to gravitate towards it. And it brings all of it. His energy is so bright that it brings everybody to him. And he's a polarizing figure. Either you love him or you hate him. Either you like what he's doing or you think he's doing too much. There's no in between on Deion. Yeah. And so in this situation here, I'm clearly on the side of, oh, come on, it's Deion, bro. Like, do you think he hates black people? What do you think he has negative visions towards black people? I mean, his own kids are products of single parent households, if you will, because they're from divorces. So, I mean, I'm pretty sure he's aware and weighing these things in when he says what he says. Like, get over it, people. But he's a polarizing figure. So either you love him or everything he says rubs you the wrong way. He's too confident in what he does. You can't be that confident in what you say. You can't make your words rhyme at random. Who do you think you are? Yeah, and he does it. Pull it out of his hat. Made it rhyme right on the spot. Gave you a parable. And everybody in the audience is like, well, gosh. Yeah. Myself included at home watching. And I'm like, man, this guy didn't lose a step. So Coach Prime, been a fan my entire life. Will remain a fan. I only like Colorado's colors in the 90s. Now I'm a Colorado fan. So go Buffs, and middle fingers to the haters.
Yeah, I hope Colorado goes like 13-0. It's not gonna happen, but I just hope that it does. That's me.
Not next year, but in a couple years, if they national championship bound, I'm all there for it.
Yeah. I just people
stop stealing recruits from Miami though. Okay.
Yeah, we just don't give people grace for comments anymore. We immediately go to the triggering and the defensiveness. And it's like, what and I say this about every other person who I've defended when it comes to this cancel culture stuff. Gina Carano, Nick Cannon, Kyrie Irving, Kanye West, anybody, I tend to defend all of them unless they truly say some reprehensible stuff. It's like, okay, you want to get mad at this person and feel some type of way, but let's look at this individual's history. Does this individual's history suggest that they're truly the type of person that you think they are because they made this one comment, or are you just being triggered by this one comment? There's nothing in Deion's history to suggest that he does not have empathy or compassion or any of that stuff for the plight of Black kids, young Black people, whatever. There's nothing in his history to suggest that. So for us to go overboard because he said this and really cast aspersions upon his character because you feel as though he was giving Black people and Black kids a bad name, in my opinion, is a bit overboard. But I'm also, again, not surprised because that's what it is. It's either nothing at all or completely overboard. So, hey, man, I'm rooting for Colorado as well. My two teams that I'll be rooting for in college football next season will be Florida State University and Colorado. Hey, man, hey. Y'all look.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, y'all got so much drama. Y'all got so much issues down there. It ain't even fun.
Hey, get out of our business. Get out of our business. We're not in y'all. Get out of ours.
Do your thing, Coach Prime. Keep doing your thing, man.
Salute,
Straight
Prime.
up.
Salute.
All right, last up, we are going to talk about Mr. Ja Morant. NBA superstar Ja Morant, the guy who I predicted to be the MVP of the league this year, Ja Morant. When we did our NBA preseason predictions, I think I said the Clippers for the championship and Ja Morant for MVP. I think that was what I said. And it looks like I'm wrong on both accounts. But Ja Morant is out here wilding. So for anybody who is unaware, Ja Morant today's the 7th. So this happened on Friday, which was March the 3rd. He went to his IG live. It looked like he was either in a club or a strip club. He flashed a pistol while he was on IG live. And, he was, just doing social media, new human weirdo stuff. And he was on IG live and he showed the pistol. Since then, he has been given a 2-game leave of absence, because I don't consider it a suspension. I call it a leave of absence. A 2-game leave of absence away from the team as he seeks the help that he needs. I don't know what the hell that means. I have no idea. I have no idea what that means. I'm getting tired of these situations with these people who get suspended or told to, leave, and then they have to get help. And it's like, what the hell does that even mean? Like, we're getting too ambiguous with this stuff. But he's away from the team for 2 games to get the help that he needs. But it's generated a larger conversation around Ja Morant and the people that he hangs with, and aspects of maturity and making good choices and not doing stuff like this because it sends a bad message and all of this other stuff. So just to provide some context for anybody who is not up to date with this story, I'll just go ahead and share this real quick to read a little bit. If you want to see the video of Ja Morant, I'm pretty sure you can find it anywhere on Twitter where he was on IG Live. There's the pic right there of him flashing the pistol. It looks like his shirt is off. People are basically concluding that he was at a strip club, although I do not believe that it is 100% conclusive that he was in a strip club. That is neither here nor there. He was somewhere being a member of the night. We can all agree on that. He was somewhere out being a member of the night, having a good time. He flashed a pistol. That's a no-no. And so now he's away from the team and he is seeking help. And this article from the New York Post says the troubles are continuing to mount for Ja Morant as the Grizzlies superstar guard is out indefinitely following an ill-advised Instagram live video that he shared of himself flashing a gun at a strip club. It has emerged that he would be subject to a potentially lengthy NBA suspension if it turns out that he brought the firearm on team premises, which included the Grizzlies' plane or locker room. NBA reporters Mark Stein and Chris Haynes discussed their matter on their podcast, This League Uncut, whatever. We're not going to play that. Stein suggested on the podcast that Morant could be facing a 50-game suspension if it was determined he possessed the weapon on team premises, but later clarified that an exact suspension length would be up to NBA Commissioner Adam Silver. David Stern suspended former Wizards star Gilbert Arenas indefinitely. It turned out to be 50 games in 2010 for bringing guns into the team's locker room.
Gilbert.
I remember that. That was actually pretty. It was kind of funny, honestly, just because Gilbert Arenas was always a funny guy to me. So it was funny the way that whole thing happened with Gilbert, because it's like he lost a dice game or something. And it's like it was a poker game or a dice game or something. And he somebody owed him money, so he brought guns to the arena. It's like, what are you doing, Gilbert? So I remember that. That was kind of I thought that it was humorous. I'm pretty sure SJWs thought that it was just serious and all. Oh, you can't do that. But there's an ongoing dialogue with concerning Ja Morant about this situation and what he did and bringing the gun and all of this other stuff. There's all of these ancillary aspects of the conversation going on about his dad being a father versus being a friend, and Ja Morant was raised in a two-parent, right? And so it's like, well, Ja Morant was raised in a two-parent household with in the suburbs, and look at what he's doing wilding out.
That's right.
And all of this other stuff about being a role model and making good decisions and how to properly conduct yourself as a $200 million athlete and knowing when to get rid of certain people and leave certain lifestyles and people behind. So it's a big conversation. A lot of people are talking about Ja Morant this week. What did you make of what Ja Morant has going on?
I think that he just had too much success too fast. That's the skinny of what I think he's got going on. And I think he's just very young. Just it was too much, too fast. Because how old is he now? 23, 24?
23, I think.
So the guy was a millionaire at 21. Access to any woman he wants at 21. Whatever car he wants, he can drive it, lease it. House, he can get it. Everybody knows his name. He's 21. He grew up listening to trap rappers and and people talking about rolling up on ops. He grew up listening to this. So this is why I'm bringing up all of this stuff. Personally, raised in two-parent household. Personally, raised by parents who gave a damn. All right. I went to public school where that was a 180 from the house. And then I listened to garbage music and watch garbage music videos every day. That made me do a 180 from my parents.
Yeah.
And so in my mind, when I was 15 years old and I was going to the league, you weren't going to tell me I wasn't going. I said, when I go to the league, I'm going to be the realest nigga alive. They're not going to stop me. See, they stopped Iverson. You know, the corporate stuff, telling him he can't wear this. I'm going to wear what I want to wear. I'm going to show up to the games wearing, you know, latest shit, you know, goals in my mouth. So I'm from Florida. I'm from Miami. So goals is the thing. So these new kids, they like all these diamond grills. So he shows up to the game with diamond grills. He grew up hip hop. And as we talked about before, hip hop's not culture. So this kid grew up thinking, when I go to the league, what's that boy name too? Bridges from Charlotte.
Mikal Bridges? No, not Mikal Bridges.
Not Mikal Bridges. That's
No.
the yeah. I forgot.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
in the comment section, guys, which Bridges is the one in Charlotte? You know, the one that's talking about sipping lean and having pistols and selling drugs and smoking weed before the game in his music. You know what he's doing? He's doing the same thing Ja's doing. I'm a real nigga in the NBA though.
Miles Bridges.
Miles Bridges.
Miles Bridges, yeah.
The whole shtick is that you can't stop me from being a real nigga. It's like Ja. Ja. Like, hey man, everybody that's watching you grew up around guys like that. This is a different time, bro. When Iverson did it, it was the first. Nobody's seen that type of behavior before, period. It was new. It was hip hop. So Ja being the, you know, the new age reincarnation of it, if you will, for these kids, he has that same little, but this is the new version of it, you know, with social media and all this other crap. And so yeah, Ja, he's no different than me. Completely out of his mind, confused. When I was 21, I finally picked things up, but I didn't get a contract in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
I was broke as hell, so I had to figure shit out. And then I figured out I was living life wrong at 21. If I had started making money at 19, 20, those lessons I learned at 21 would have never learned them.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be this age right now, still ignorant to stuff that I found out at 21, 22 years old, because money opened up the availability of being out of my mind. Josh out of his mind. Him doing all this stuff, nightclub, like you said, strip club or not, in the backyard, and him beating up a 17-year-old.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
Allegedly, he flashed a gun at that kid too.
Allegedly, with all of this, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't need Ja or T Ja coming after me. But how do you feel about this, man? I don't like it. I don't like this behavior. I think that this young man is completely brainwashed.
Yeah, he is. It's his programming. And it's unfortunate that whenever people in the media bring stuff like this up, people in, you know, the internet want to immediately dismiss it. When they were talking about this on Countdown last week, Michael Wilbon, who's an older guy, I want to say Michael Wilbon is like, how old is Michael Wilbon? Like late 50s, maybe early 60s, something like that. I don't know exactly how old Mike Wilbon is. I ain't trying to age him if he's not that old, but he brought up he when they were talking about this on Countdown, Michael Wilbon brought up how these are some of the things that are unique unto the Black community, because there's an aspect of our quote unquote culture which embraces thug mentality. And, you know, he wasn't shot down on the show when he brought it up, but he was shot down by people who were immediately wanting to dismiss that because we sort of believe that this kind of stuff is normal. And I think that this is all programming. Like, he's a 23-year-old child. You found it?
Oh no, my bad. I was looking at a comment section. Somebody says here that he's in Memphis with Glorilla and Black Youngster. So he's in the streets. Gigi unit.
Ain't Yo Gotti from Memphis too, ain't he?
That's right, man.
Yeah,
Gotta keep it hood,
Yo
bro.
Gotti from Memphis, and what's his name was from Memphis too.
Dolph. Gotta keep
Dolph.
it street.
There you go. Yeah, he was from Memphis. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. I mean, this is programming, so I think that that's 100% valid. Like, you have to take into account this kid's age. Like, one of the disservices that we have done to pro athletes is we have created this culture of responsibility around them. And so because we've created this culture of responsibility around them, we've in turn created this culture around them in which they are disqualified from doing human things. Like, we as human beings are imperfect. We're broken and we're imperfect and we do stupid stuff. And Ja Morant is no different. And so when Ja Morant did this, he was being a broken and imperfect human being, which we all are. It just so happens that you have to couple Ja Morant's brokenness and imperfection with the fact that he is subjected to hip hop programming, as most young black kids are. And so when you combine those two things, what you're going to get is the propensity for this kind of behavior. It's our responsibility as a society at large to not place these stipulations of perfection upon these individuals, because they're going to do stupid stuff and they have to be given the grace to learn their lesson. Now, am I excusing Ja Morant for doing this? No. And a large part of the reason as to why I'm not excusing him for doing this is because in my older age, I have really taken a turn. Well, in my older age, I have like turned the corner in terms of the way that I view a lot of this hip hop stuff and this music stuff. It is what it is. You can call me what you want, but I really do have mixed emotions with respect to the value of this music and the value that the music has on our population. I think it does more harm than good for the most part, because most of us, Ja Morant included, do not have the filter to be able to sort of take in a lot of these things as entertainment and forms of expression. He internalizes this stuff as real life. And so because he internalizes this stuff as real life, and these champions and these individuals that he looks up to, they portray the music as their real life, he is going to in turn sort of project it as, this is my culture and this is who I am and this is what I represent, even if it's to the detriment of his actual personal growth. Now, I recognize these things, but when I express them, I get kickback because I'm told that the music doesn't really do all that. And I firmly believe that it does. I think his diamond grill, as you like to call it, his tattoos, all the way down to his hair, the cuts in his eyebrows, that all comes from programming. He did not come up with that stuff himself. And going on IG Live and flashing a gun is also a part of his programming. So he can make the mistake. Thankfully, no one was harmed, no one was hurt, no one was injured. And so because no one was hurt, harmed, or injured, we can use this as a teachable moment for him so that he can learn his lesson and hopefully reverse some of his behavior and do things a little differently in the future. But this is more so an indication of how we view these guys. And it's no different than Will Smith. I said back before when Will Smith was going through his situation after slapping the shit out of Chris Rock. Like, Will Smith went on this contrition tour and got on his YouTube channel and made these videos doing a Q&A in which he was answering questions from fans. The only reason why he chose to do that was because he felt as though he violated our expectations of him. It wasn't because he wasn't being himself in that moment, because I think he was. Like Chappelle said, he took his mask off. He was being himself in that moment, but he felt as though he had to pay a penance for it because he violated our expectations of him. And now Ja Morant is going through this largely because he violated our expectations of him supposedly living a mistake-free life or a mistake-free existence. This dude is going to do dumb shit. And this was dumb shit that he did. And he needs to be held to account for that. But is he going to do something in the future that's just as, if not more dumb? Potentially. You can't take that away from him because his programming is what it is. On top of his programming, he's an imperfect, fractured human being who's capable of doing dumb stuff and making stupid mistakes. So we need to stop hero worshiping these guys and creating this veil or this shroud of perfection around them and treating the narrative around these incidents as a referendum on their character or lack thereof, when really all of us are going to do dumb stuff from time to time, and he's no different. So his programming does apply. That's probably the part of this that sticks in my craw the most. Like, we really need to stop. And this is where I agree with people like Mike Wilbon. And I'm a stick in the mud. I'm older. It is what it is. But we need to stop embracing a lot of these damaging, destructive themes that is inherent in this entertainment and this music, or as you like to call it, mind control, because you don't believe in entertainment. You call it, mind control, conditioning. And I think that it is as such. It controls these people's behaviors, and it controls his behavior. And it's such a powerful guiding force that it renders the fact that he grew up in the suburbs, raised by two parents, completely null and void, because they can't be around him at all times. They can't control his actions. They definitely can't tell him what to do because he is the breadwinner of the family. He provides for them. He tells them. He probably is in position to tell them what to do because he provides for them.
I'm sure he does.
So you can't tell this dude, you can't tell this kid what to do, what to say, how to dress, how to act. So you factor all of that in. All this says to me is, hey, man, lesson learned, bro. Don't get on IG Live doing this new human stuff, flashing pistols in front of the camera. Because this is the price that you pay for it. It's stupid. It's hella stupid. But is it completely understandable? In my opinion, absolutely.
Yeah, well said, dude. And I don't know what's gonna make him learn to not be this character, because he's not being himself.
Yeah.
And I don't care what he says. Like, if I talk to him one-on-one and he displays this person that was waving that gun and punched that 17-year-old kid, then he's crazy.
Right.
Or if I talk to him and then he's open about how he was programmed, about, man, I learned this from that. He's not going to call it programming, but I started doing this from this, dude, to be honest with you. If he's honest where he's getting his behavior, I had to be honest where I was getting all this goofy behavior from. It was very stupid. But I had to have this persona, I felt. And so by having this persona, I'm putting myself in bad situations. I'm in the wrong area of town. I don't know these people. By the way, Miami's demographics are changing. But there's still some areas in Miami where you don't go if you don't know the people there. And here I go, young, green as hell, and being in areas I do not belong in, wearing stuff that I should get robbed for. Thank goodness nothing happened. But the point remains is, what makes me feel obligated to be out of character? And I had to be honest that it was, social pressure from the city, but also a lot of this dumb music and entertainment that I was ingesting my entire life. And so for him, if he's honest with the fact, well, hey, man, I'm getting all this stuff from listening to what's these kids listening to Pooh Shiesty. And if you listen to Pooh Shiesty's music, by the way, people on the conscious approach wouldn't dare listen to Pooh Shiesty. But if you do have to
locked up right now.
Yeah, he is.
He locked up
for actually shooting at people and being an idiot.
Correct.
And the reason why I brought him up is he's actually an idiot.
Yeah.
I'm like, bro, you are like the hottest kid. Everybody loves you. Why are you really out here trying to finesse and shoot? What are you doing? No, you don't understand. See, these kids don't know the difference. They're literally living in that world that we all knew was fiction when we were growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And so Ja, listening to Pooh Shiesty, listening to all of these people, thinks that this is, he grew when he was like, when Ja was, somebody do the math on this. When Ja was probably like 6, 7 years old, Chief Keef was blowing up.
Yeah.
This kid's frame of reference is Chief Keef and up. He
Yeah.
has no reference of art when it
Right.
comes to hip hop. He only knows trapping, finessing, killing, murdering, doing lean. You know, he ain't gonna sip lean. Thank goodness. Hopefully not.
Right.
All right. Yeah, man. Don't get and not lean to the point where it's gonna incapacitate you like DeMarcus Russell. I'm
Right.
talking about just recreationally doing it. Don't even sip it at a club. Like, there's no need to get into that life. And for everybody who's watching this, who's older, if you came from our cohort and up, hell, even the ones that are slightly up under us, we've seen enough to know that this is stupid behavior. And now, you know, we got the internet for everybody that's weighing in on this. And, you know, the world is having a intervention with him, telling him that, because everybody can see that he's a nice guy. He may not think so because he'll bust somebody's ass, right? He's got a pistol, so he'll clap somebody. So I ain't sweet. Nobody's saying you're sweet, John. We're saying that you're not the guys who do federal time in prison. So stop acting
Nor should
like
you.
you're
Nor should you want to be. Nor should you want to be.
So stop acting like him, bro. $100 million contract, shoes. You're blowing other stuff out the window, bro.
Bro got his own. Bro got his own shoe. He on Powerade. His contract is like 200 million.
You'll see me in every commercial, bro. If I was Ja Morant, I'm in every commercial. I'm in your feed on YouTube. I'm getting YouTube checks from ads. I'm advertising conditioners in Memphis. You know, air conditioners. I don't care. I'm doing anything if I'm Ja Morant to get a bag. You're ruining bags. You're ruining future. There's some contracts or there's some things that you probably can't get right now because of all this behavior. So yeah, man, I'm not a fan of this. I think it's ridiculous, but I think it stems from him absorbing too much stuff and having too much access to too much stuff at a young age.
Yeah.
Where he was in that perfect storm of confusion plus money. And
yeah,
and I can tell you right now, I was at same level of confused. I didn't have the money or exposure to be seen doing this dumb shit. But trust and believe, if I had $100 million contract when I was 19 or whatever, you know, he didn't have that much money. But you get what I'm saying? If I had that kind of money when I was 19, I would have been on a yacht pouring champagne on some video chick because I saw Dame Dash doing it. I got a credit card.
Yeah.
I'm swiping it in between this stripper's ass cheeks.
Yeah.
I saw Nelly do it. Now, I'm not doing it because I saw them doing it. I'm just saying, if there's a yacht party and I got champagne and I know this girl will take it in the face, I'm going to spray champagne on her. Or if I'm at a you know, anything else, you know, I would have been doing stuff because, you know, if it's the same yacht party, hell, different yacht party because I'm balling. And then there's strippers there, and I got a credit card. By the way, guys, I'm 19 years old, so this is 2005. I would have did that as a joke, just because Nelly did it. Hey, y'all, look, this stripper's busting ass on my boat. Ha 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 ha. Would I do that now? No. But I was young and I was confused. Ja, young, confused. 2-parent household, who gives a damn? Right?
Yeah.
If the same people out there that love to holler about, well, yeah, I know. Okay, then it doesn't matter that he has 2 parents because, like people are saying, the internet is saying, you know, psychoanalyzing his father, saying that he's too busy trying to be a groupie, hang around, you know, just enjoying the games and not being a real father. And so people are attacking him. But hey, man, I think this whole thing is sad for him. Hopefully this works, this intervention, and he just stops. But I'm telling you, right? I don't think he's on the level of go to jail, crazy shit. He's just doing a lot of dumb kiddie things. Hopefully, he grows out of it.
Yeah, I don't think he's there yet, but it could get to that point because now there are a few incidents now with him, and multiple of these incidents involve guns
and violence.
Yes, so at a certain point, like, you know, we like to give these guys grace because we just want to believe that these athletes are above board, but sometimes this is who they are. It just is what it is. But you know, it's unfortunate, but like, you know, it sucks because we do not give enough attention to the programming aspect of this stuff. We're so quick to talk about how he needs to do better and make better choices, and how his parents were this or that, or his dad is this or that, or the money, or all of this other stuff. We're so quick to talk about that, and we don't talk about the social conditioning and the programming because it's a faux pas. It's almost seen as in poor taste to say, hey man, hip hop made me do it. But sometimes in these conversations, it's worth mentioning, hey man, these guys are young. It's like you said, when I was young, I was subjected to programming my damn self. I just didn't have $1 million to be able to exact my programming to the fullest extent.
Exactly.
But if I was a millionaire at 19, 20 years old, I would have. Because all I can say to Ja Morant is that I hope he learns, similar to Michael B. Jordan, to be honest, at some point during his maturation process, that he learns that it is okay for him to think for himself.
Yes.
And if he learns through thinking for himself that stuff is actually who he is, then as you said, at that point, I will contend that he has a problem.
Yeah.
I would contend that he has an absolute problem. But until we have enough evidence to suggest that that's what's going on, I have to chalk this up to him being no different than these other dudes that I was around, that I continue to be around sometimes, that are just ingratiated with a lot of the entertainment and mind control programming and the music and stuff that they consume in too heavy of a dosage on too much of a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
That's what this is. And you can break it down along cultural lines, because I would argue people who are just the same age as him, who are coming into the same money as him, but whose cultural edifice isn't the same, and so they aren't subject to the same form of programming. That's the reason why you don't see them doing the same kind of stuff that you see people like Ja Morant doing. But we don't talk about it enough because it is too much of a, it's like a scarlet letter almost to bring up the music, because you're not down, or you're not cool, or you're not with us enough, or whatever, to bring up. If you bring up the music, like, you're not supposed to do that. Hey man, look, I'm gonna bring this shit up, and I'm gonna bring up these shows, and I'm gonna bring up this entertainment, and I'm gonna bring up this social media stuff. I'm gonna bring it up because it has an overpowering, guiding influence on the way that a lot of these people from these younger generations conduct themselves and behave. And all of the two-parent households in the world are not powerful enough to offset that.
Exactly, dude.
Because if the mind control was powerful enough to offset it for me, and it's 10 times worse now than what it was 10, 15 years ago, then of course it has no bearing on whether Ja Morant's going to do mind control stuff when he has a $200 million contract and it has the world at his as his oyster. So people need to talk about this more than talking about the kid, the parents, and how it's all on Ja Morant to do this or do that. Hey man, look, at the very most, you just got to chalk this up as a learning experience. It is what it is, man. It is. But these jits out here are programmed. They're brainwashed. They are.
I can't. And his affinity with guns. His affinity with guns at this point makes zero sense. Yeah. I mean, I don't know why he's. I mean, you heard about the thing where he got into some beef with somebody or whatever at the game or whatever. And people was, pointing lasers.
Pointing a laser, yeah.
Like, what are y'all doing? Y'all thought that was cute. So you hang around people who do stuff like that to think that's cool. That's wild stuff, man.
Yeah.
You gotta get that up.
Yeah. And I, Joe Budden, would argue that Ja Morant is corny.
No, real talk. Like that's corny. And that's why everybody's calling out. Because it's like, bro, we all know you're not from that.
Right.
So it makes you look stupid.
Yeah.
And so even if he crashes out and actually does something dumb, we still know he's not from that.
Right.
He just crashed out in front of everybody's face. So he needs to slow down. But you can't tell a kid with all of that going on to slow down. And that's why when we mentioned him before, that's why I was like, he needs Iverson. He needs somebody that did it to talk to him, who had those friends, who made them friends that made him feel guilty. So he kept giving them money. Them friends that made him do this. So he kept doing that for them. You know, he bought them he got them a business credit line or something like that. Don't do none of this for these people. Because when you were in the gym, they were sitting on the block waiting for you to get out.
Yeah.
They're still there, sitting for you to wait to get out of the arena with lasers in their hand, pointing them at ops. Getting probed out of the arena.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, man, absolutely crazy. But again, the internet getting at him like this, and Ja comes off as a kid. Well, you can't tell him what to do, which is probably why dad can't get him under control, like the internet's saying. He looks like a person you can't talk to.
Right, but his dad can't get him under control when his dad is depending on him for his livelihood. So who is his dad? Who is his dad to tell him how to act and what to do when his dad is one of the members of his entourage?
That's
his
crazy.
dad. When that situation went down with Shannon Sharp at the Lakers game with the Grizzlies, his dad was there on the front lines, ready to do something. He's one of your boys at this point. He's not your father. And he depends on your life. His livelihood is dependent upon his son. So there's nothing that he can tell him. You're not going to risk. What you going to do? Tell your son something that he needs to hear and risk him cutting you off? You can't have that. Boy, this stuff is all.
That's some sucker.
This stuff is all programming, bro. It is. It's all programming. It's all programming, and hopefully this can just be. Hopefully this can serve as a teachable moment for him. And yeah, maybe he needs to go and talk to Allen Iverson or something like this. But talk to Allen Iverson. Don't go talking to people like Matt Barnes or Steven Jackson, who are just older versions of Ja Morant.
Thank you.
So do not.
And if you want to talk about Corny, right? I don't care. I'm dropping names. Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson. Some dudes are corny, and the internet's seen it now. I think it took a while. I'm even in all the smoke comment section occasionally every once in a while just to see what people got to say, and then people be calling them out in there. So it's just like, yeah, man, these guys they lost it. They lost their facade. So yeah, that's a good comp, bro. If you keep this up, Jock, look at Steven Jackson. You'll be checking in Memphis 10 years from now, talking about you on old block.
40 plus. You going on 50 talking. You going on 50 talking like you a rapper.
Come on, bro.
Like this shit has got to stop. It does. It really does. It really does.
Young Ja. Get him, Young Ja. Young Ja. That should be
a thing. Man, yeah. Hopefully, man, he'll get straight, man, and get back on the straight and narrow. Because this is madness. And I'm glad you brought up the programming angle. I was going to do the same. It doesn't get talked about enough because this is our culture. It can't be blamed for it because we're so proud of it because it's our culture. But it has a lot to do with influencing situations like this. And, more people like, Michael Wilbon brings it up. I bring it up if I was on these shows. I don't give a damn. I would. And, I'm not going to be too scared to bring it up because it needs to be said. Because his parental guidance clearly wasn't enough to sway him from doing dumb shit like this. So,
I said,
It is what it is, man.
But Jay said, 3 cuts in your eyebrow, trying to wild out.
Yeah, the game is ours. We'll never bow out. Y'all just gotta hope that we gracefully foul out. Yeah. But yeah, it is what it is, man. Go ahead and get right, John, man. Get back on the court. But that will do it for our stream this week, man. Great topics, great conversation. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Appreciate the boy McCall for tuning in as well. Friend of the channel and also a close friend of the squad. So appreciate you for tuning in, man. As I always like to say, man, we appreciate you supporting this logical content that we kick on the Conscious Approach channel on YouTube each and every week. My name is JV Wins. That is Dogon SS. If you have not done so, please hit that subscribe button so that you can get notifications whenever new content is published to the channel as we continue to crank out that goodness. Be on the lookout for the RSS feed. It will be uploaded to all podcast platforms, Pandora, Apple Podcast, Spotify, wherever you get your audio fix, so that you can listen to this in audio form. If you are watching this video on the Meta page, go ahead and follow the page, hit that like button, share the video, leave a comment wherever you watch this video, because we certainly like to get a gander of what the people have to say about what we said about these various topics. You can find me on Instagram at JVWins, JVWINS, and the Conscious Approach page is also on Instagram at ConApproach, CONAPPROACH. So until next time, please continue to support the logical content because we certainly appreciate it. And please, please, please learn how to think for yourself. Learn how to be your own unique individual self. Do not be a group thinker. Don't go with the wave. No matter what your skin color, your sex, gender, race, creed is, it doesn't matter. Think for yourself, man. As long as your opinions are your own and not the opinions of those whom you think you need to have that opinion for, you're all good. But otherwise, don't be a group thinker. Stay on your square. Be your unique self. Think for yourself, and you'll be all the better for it. And until next time, we certainly appreciate you supporting this logical content.
Absolutely. And the name is Dogon SS. You can find me on Instagram at Dogon_SS and at YouTube at Dogon_SS. And as I always say on every pod, guys, all right, don't be too high, don't be too low. Keep it calm, keep it chill, keep it playing, man. Don't let anybody get you off your pivot. And as JV Wins just said, man, y'all stay on y'all square. All right. So until the next time, guys, we'll catch y'all on the flip side.
Yep. Yeah. Get rid of that programming, man. You got to exercise the demons. Exercise them demons, man. No more mind control, no more programming. But that'll do it for us. We're signing off. We'll see you on the next video. Peace.
Peace.